All right, so thanks for everybody showing up after food and getting ready for the session here. So we have a bunch of slides. We also have a lot of time, so I encourage people in the room to ask questions. Dialogue is good. If we're moving too fast, moving too slow, it'd be good to, understand, where you're coming from. This is, again, I'm Kevin, CEO of Maybell. This is my co-founder, Kieran, who's the CTO. And we're going to kind of do an extension of the keynote that we had this morning, where we were good enough to have Dave on stage from Toffler Associates with us. We're going to use that use case to kind of double or even triple click on a lot of the topics that we were talking about on the keynote, and talk about not only that use case, but what to think about when implementing AI. But not only that, especially when you're implementing AI, when you're building AI in-house for some reason. So it's like you're not just going to go out and necessarily buy a third-party tool to get it done, but you want to build in-house for some specific reason. So we'll go over that, and we'll get moving. So really high level, we'll back the truck up a little bit. I know there's a lot of use cases for AI. We see AI as kind of two big buckets, right? And I realize there's a ton of smaller buckets under this, but there's kind of these two big buckets of AI, what we see as assistive AI and integrated AI, which goes along with what I was talking about before. So when you're looking at the C staff of your organization, you can get AI that sits next to the employees or the humans in your business. So think like a developer co-pilot, or opening up ChatGPT or Claude to your environment and getting people just to interact with that. And that can be a huge efficiency win, right? So like when you go to a CEO of a company, they'd be like, yes, we've implemented AI. All my developers use co-pilots, right? And that there's a certain level of efficiency and gains that you're getting out of that. Hopefully you're seeing not just more code going to production, but better code. That's something that you want to look when you're doing things like that. But then there's also a big bucket that we see as integrated AI. So not AI, maybe the AI sits next to a human, but AI that you're building in-house to differentiate yourself from your competition. So if you're pulling co-pilots in, that's good, and you should do that. And one of these is not, like, you don't have to do one of these or the other. A lot of companies end up doing both. But if you're pulling that in, your competitor's doing that, right? You're doing that to kind of stay up with the Joneses. How are you using AI to push your organization forward? How are you using it to create new products, new revenue streams, enhance things that you have within your organization? And we're going to focus on that second bucket more than the first bucket today. So we're going to concentrate on, hey, what are the decisions and what you should think about when you're building AI to either build an internal tool or a product that you're going to sell to your customers. Show of hand, are people out of the two buckets, before I switch slides, I should ask, like, how many people are doing assistive AI in their organizations? How many people have AI next to them as they do work kind of every day? All right, good. And then how many people integrated AI? How many people like building in-house? Okay, so good. Good amount in the room doing both. All right, so that's awesome. I want to go over this, and if anybody's willing to share when I'm done this slide, like what you're doing, that would be interesting to hear from you as well. So what we see as building AI, why do I make the decision to build AI in-house, right? So usually you want to own, there's some sort of data within your organization that you want to own, right? You don't want that going outside of your walls in some way, shape, or form. Walls nowadays could be your cloud account, which, the walls are a little blurry there to begin with, but it's locked down by permissions. Sometimes those walls are actual walls, actual data centers, scanned in and out of, things like that. But there's a certain amount of control that you want over the data, and usually that data has some sort of intrinsic IP value to you, right? And you want to curate that. You believe that data is what differentiates you in a way, or how you process it, or the workflows that you use, what you do in your business is special to what you do. And to build on top of that, you want your own expertise, your own subject matter experts, the own people in your business building on that AI and making that AI yours for whatever business or organization that you're a part of. You want to be able to shape the output. You want to have the tools to turn the dials yourselves. When you see output come back, you want to be able to see where it came from in your organization. How do you tune it in production? How do you own this AI? And then how do you govern it? Can you govern it in-house, or are you relying on somebody else to actually understand how to govern this data and how to push it forward? Or do you own that? Like, are you the one who needs to be confident in the solution, so you want to own that particular solution? And that doesn't mean you have to build everything in-house. Like I said before, you can choose in your business what things you're pulling off the shelf, what things you're building, right? So this is supposed to be a little bit interactive. I'm not going to force anyone to say anything, but if anybody's building today, do you want to, yeah, or can we get a mic? Sorry. I was told we can't hear you unless you have the mic, so.
Yeah, my name is David Hagelin, CTO of Rocket Graph and co-founder. My customers have classified data, so sensitive in a different way than maybe you were thinking about. And what does that mean to their use of Gen AI inside their classified network, and how does that fit into your view?
Yeah, absolutely. So classified, especially here, in Northern Virginia and, Gov AI and everything like that. So like, where are you processing your data? You may not want your data leaving your walls. So there's a few different things around classified data. One is classified data being processed on a system that it shouldn't be processed on. And then second are the eyes that end up seeing the output of classified data, the eyes that are supposed to see classified data in the first place. So we'll dig into this a little bit later in the deck, but there's two parts to that. So one, let's process the data within the boundaries that's supposed to be processed in. But also labeling is a big part of this. How do you label your data? So as classified data is coming into the system, is that labeled correctly? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to present data to an LLM that you don't want to see in the output. Because as soon as you present data to an LLM, whether it was trained into it or whether it was seen by RAG, there is a possibility, no matter how many times you prompt it to say, no, don't do this. Tell an LLM not to use EM dashes, and then see how many EM dashes show up in the output, right? Like, if you don't have controls around that. So what you want to do is don't present data to the LLM that you don't want getting out. So kind of a long answer is not only do you have the data walls, but you have a labeling solution that you have to put in place too. So on retrieval, you're not, based on the persona who's asking for it, is not seeing the information that they're not supposed to see, right?
Another aspect is,
yeah, sure.
Actually knowing what my colleague is asking as a question is something that there needs to be a wall between.
Correct.
My colleague and me. So
Yep.
the privacy of the question itself is important as well.
Yeah, the context,
Not
coming in.
just the data, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Anybody else? That was good. I like that. Or if you're building in-house and you're willing to share, like with the room, yeah.
So I work for a hardware software classic infrastructure vendor. So very simple use cases. Salespeople, we have a big list of partners that we have in both aspects. They sit down with the customer and say, hey, I need to solve a problem with XYZ. What are some of our best partners? What can we do to solve that? We have internal consulting as well. So pulling from the list of all of the possible options. Can we use internal consultants, our preferred partners in some instances, and things like that? So I feel like that's a pretty easy use case.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like most of you use it in-house to then like make everyone better, and that's great because you're unlocking data maybe you haven't unlocked before in your business to parts of your business that haven't been able to see it before, right? Or maybe they were able to see it, but they weren't using it. Yeah. Right.
All right, I'm Joseph Wilhelm with Jethead Development, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're working on. So we put together CI/CD frameworks that integrate natively. So we have a framework, it communicates with the API to Bitbucket, Jenkins, Tecton, and we'll go and use that to go and connect on-premise to whatever user's model, whatever they want to go and use. And that's how we're using generative AI and building out solutions in these TS/SCI environments.
Nice. Yeah, and what's the AI unlocking for you in that flow?
So for the CI/CD systems, we use it for code review health, not just reviewing the code, but also what is the current status? Is something behind? Do you need to go and ping another engineer? Let's go and send out an email. Do we need to go and change the wording on this? Is your code review in a way is maintainable? Is it healthy? That kind of thing.
Nice. Very cool. So you have an auditor looking at everything without a person going through looking at all the code, basically. Yeah.
So we definitely keep a human in the loop. We always believe in that, right? But this is the first step, and people go and use this solution within the Navy because they want to alleviate some mental fatigue. They want uniformity across their code bases. They want to pull up the quality of their code bases. Really, they just need to get things done better, faster, safer, and that's where AI sort of takes the reins, at least as a first pass. At
Right.
that point, whether the like code author or the reviewer want to go and make changes or agree or disagree, that's up to them. But we see value right now, and as do they, in just that initial first pass.
Got it. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right. So all good use cases, all very valid reasons to, build in-house, right? Your code, your data, your things. There's a repeating pattern here, right? So we're not going to do the whole keynote again, but just to level set everybody on, where we came from the keynote. To bring you the example, of Toffler. Toffler was, getting into AI. They realized they needed to disrupt their own business. They saw that AI as an opportunity to do that, and they started building on their own, right? And they realized AI got them far down the train, kind of like we were talking about before. Hey, a first pass was great, and I'm sure you're already thinking about, like, what's my second pass, my third pass, like, how do I get there? And Toffler realized that, hey, AI wasn't only going to help their SMEs with deals in front of their customers, but there was a product here, right? Like, there was a way to change their business. There was a way to go to market. There was a different way to drive revenue, right? And the opportunity was Sign. And this is what we talked about, at the keynote. And so we're going to kind of come through this story, like, where do most people start with AI? Where do they get to building in-house? We're going to dive into those 6 obstacles that I talked about in the keynote. We'll dive into those, and I'd love to get feedback from people in the room who've hit kind of the same obstacles and what you're dealing with today. But like with Sign, they started with a single LLM, right? They were super large context windows, like, hey, this wasn't working. Let's give it more data. Let's give it more data. They had a library of prompts, trying to get this thing done. And they were stuck in kind of like this endless circle of, how do I make this better? How do I make this better? How do I make this better, right? And so, again, recapping on the keynote a little bit, we find people implementing AI in-house are going to hit these 6 things, right? Context optimization, I think, is probably the biggest one. You'll hear context optimization. You'll hear context engineering. Context is the thing that is going to make or break how you use AI, maybe even more so than the underlying model to start, right? And you will have to also work with different models. That's part of this. Sometimes an OpenAPI is good, sometimes a Claude, sometimes a small language model. That'll work, but if your context isn't driving the outcome properly, you can flip models out all day long. You're not necessarily going to get where you want to go. How you control that, and we're going to dive down into each of these, so I'm not going to talk about these for length here because we're going to double click on all of these. But how you control the execution of that, how you track the decision-making process, and my co-founder and CTO can talk a little bit more about how we look at that and how we build our confidence scoring. And if there are technical people in the room and you want to pepper him, by all means, he loves doing these things. That's why he's sitting like a whole chair away from me right now. No, but seriously, like we're happy to dive down, into anything there. You can't deploy what you can't measure. If you're not measuring, this is a big thing. If you're not measuring how well you're doing, and it can be feedback. It can be feedback either from thumbs up and thumbs down from the developer. It can be feedback from consultants in your organization. It can be feedback on whether I saw a classified document I was supposed to see or not, and get that done. And I can't stress this enough. Like, put this in a workflow. Don't try and do a one-shot solution. So we talked about this in the keynote. We'll dive down into this a little bit more in this session. Don't try and make one AI agent to rule them all. I think focus and the ability to know what you want to get to is as important with AI as any system that we build. There are people out there who say, just give us your data, start talking with it, we'll figure out what to do with AI later. Like, that's a good way to get you to pay a shit ton of money to, give your data away and see what they're going to do with it. But having something you want to get done for your business, right? For Toffler, it was, how do we productize what we've been doing for 30 years, and then breaking that down into use cases. We have a customer in the construction business. It was, how do I process a request for proposal faster? How do I process a bill of materials faster? How do I drive 400% more acceleration in my business? Can AI help me with that? When you start breaking that down, you'll realize I'm making smaller AI solutions. You can call them agents, you can call them experiences. I think agent's kind of like a blown out term at the moment. We say it and we don't say it at Maybell, I will say, but we want to build AI solutions that actually drive outcomes. And so that measurement, and then again, the feedback system, you have to have these 6 things. And doing these 6 things is what breaks you out of the prompt engineering loop. This is what breaks you out of just sending more and more context to an LLM, hoping that you're going to get a better answer. So, I mean, I'll pause real quick. Does this resonate for people building AI? Resonate? Not, or if anybody has, trying to make it interactive, but I'm not going to force anybody. Yeah, thumbs up? Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Awesome.
Part of it may not be the context loop. It's just the exposure and experience of working with AI and not knowing that you can go to steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. You don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
Right. So just.
I think that's a great point. You're going to meet people at different points in their AI journey, right? And one of the questions I get asked constantly is like, Kevin, you're in the AI space, and like outside of like being here at a conference where everyone's around AI and stuff, like day-to-day life, what should I do? It's like, you should just start using AI. I think is like getting to your point. Like, you won't know, like, I don't know how to use AI for my business. Start using it in your car, right? Like, it's amazing. You can take ChatGPT and you can talk with it like it's a person, and it's a little weird, but it's really fast. It gives you good answers, but you'll learn how to start interacting, and you'll learn what you say and what you get back, and you'll start feeling more comfortable with it. If you don't use AI and you expect your employees to use AI, or you expect people around you to use AI or implement it, and you're not doing it, then it's not going to work. Like, either walk the walk or don't do it. I recommend doing it, because AI is going to be embedded in everything we do at some point in time. Like, even when you go, look, Taco Bell was an example in the keynote before we got up there. Like, when you order your chimichanga from Taco Bell or whatever it is there, like, it's like, you will get frustrated if you don't understand how AI works and your order starts going wrong, right? You'll be like my parents trying to use the internet, like, shaking their fist at the air because they don't know, they kind of were very slow adopters into a new technology. So let's go into context engineering a little bit. So some of the things to keep in mind, and I think this is probably number one about everything. So data structuring, and we could probably spend an entire session just on data structuring and how we think about data structuring for context engineering. But one of the big things you find out when you're building AI is what I said before. You don't want to just throw all these flat file documents. So one of the big requests people have is like, well, can you just use AI with my data where it is? Yes, we can. Basically what you're doing is you're asking for, an elegant search interface over top of a large corpus of information, and then trying to drag that out into an LLM at runtime. And every time at runtime, you're trying to throw this large amount of information in. So you're spending a lot of money on looking over a large amount of data constantly. You're spending a lot of money by throwing a lot of context at the LLM, and you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what the hell that context was going on. So this is the reason why things like vector databases and graph databases and other things exist as these intermediary stores between where the model is and what your retrieval process is. So When you're building a solution, what you want to do is you want to take a look at your data and figure out, hey, do I have is there structure in my unstructured information? Or if I'm looking at something like a legal code, what are the references within that legal code? How does this information relate to each other? And then decide how to store that information or the metadata for that information. So upon retrieval, you're not just going to this large amount of data set all the time. You have an intelligent way to go look up vectors that are close to one another. You have a way, maybe in a citation graph, maybe you used AI and ML to figure out how to build that citation graph ahead of time. So then when you go retrieve, you're sending the smallest amount of context to the LLM to get the best possible answer. So you need to think about things like schema design, index strategy, ranking your data upon retrieval. So like something you said earlier with the confidential information, right? It's like, am I tagging my information ahead of time so when a request comes in, I don't go pull a label or I don't pull a thing that I don't want to pull? And maybe you're using AI to make that decision, maybe you're not. Maybe it's a more fundamental like, hey, Bob logged in. Bob doesn't get to see any of these labels, but at least we've gone through and pre-labeled the information so Bob doesn't see anything labeled, top secret, right? And that stuff never gets presented to the LLM. Maybe it's a little bit more elegant where you take the question, you pre-process that with a small language model and you say like, based on this question, what type of labels should be available to this person? Plus, I will also run it around their authentication and authorization access, right? But if you don't pre-process your information, and you don't have a way of at least storing metadata around that information, and you're building your context, you're going to run into a scaling problem. So, execution control. Again, this builds on what we said before. So, policy enforcement. As you get into more and more data that could be confidential in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's not top secret information, maybe it's company IP information. You want to have a labeling and mechanism to prevent data from being shown to the LLM. You want to be able to send tasks to the right model at the right time. So something I said before, one of those learning practices is, hey, we're going to send everything to the same model. We're going to send everything to the same agent. We're going to try and do a one-shot. Having an ability to route the right type of questions and the right type of requests to the right type of experience that runs on the right type of model is extremely important, right? And some of this happens for you today, like when you go to a Claude or you go to an OpenAI, especially if you use 5, they have the auto feature, right? Tries to figure out if you need the pro version or the light version or this version. Now, when you're running at scale and you're running these iterations over and over and over again, you may not want to be dynamically figuring out the model every time, but you may want that request dynamically routed to the same type of model every time for the same experience, right? So we do a lot of entity extraction at Maybell, a lot of just using AI and OCR process to get information out of documents that have a lot of IP to an organization but haven't been able to necessarily be used in a product or in an organization, right? And you don't need you don't need, the latest and greatest open API model for that. You can use, maybe 2 versions back of Claude, right? And those requests are great. Now, if you want to take that information and go do something else with it, now you might need to go, like if you want to do some sort of reasoning or something else with that information, now you might want to route it to a different model. So from the beginning, realize you're solving for pain points, and all those pain points, not everything is a hammer, not everything is a nail, right? You want to look for different ways to make all that happen. You want to have monitoring, you want to have fallback, especially if you're using vendor models. I don't know, if you use the vendors, like these things go down. They're not necessarily as reliable as a EC2 or Azure VM instance. They get latent, they get slow. You want to have a backup policy, especially if you're running at scale. So you want to have different ways that you can flop in and out either different models' experiences, or have a way that understands when the LLM breaks, how is your app going to work? Is it going to be a failure, or is it going to be graceful? Yeah, go ahead.
You've been using the word at scale a lot.
Yep.
And from my perspective, at scale means petabytes of data.
Okay.
And so I really want to know what you think of when you say at scale, and I try to understand that usage of that term.
Yeah, sure. So I think data is part of it, right? And I don't know, what's our largest, we're not up to petabytes yet? Terabytes is what we're working with right now. Probably one of our larger customers. And again, that's on an experience. So if you add up maybe a bunch of their experiences, I don't know if we get to quite petabytes for a customer yet, but definitely in the large terabytes. So that's the size of the corpus of information we might be going after for that particular use case that's sitting behind an AI experience. And then at scale doesn't necessarily mean the amount of data, but how often are you running these transactions? Like, are you running thousands of transactions, and is what we consider at scale, let me bring it back. It's like, are you running without a human monitoring every single output? So let's bring it way back. So first, are you running your AI, if a human has to sit next to every single output that's coming out of your AI, you're helping drive human efficiency, but you're not helping drive scale of the organization, right? So one of our customers, SpecBooks, in the construction field, they're processing, tens of thousands of specification plans, a week, right? And so not all of those are going through someone in the organization anymore, right? And so at scale to them means that humans are getting involved when they have to, and the process and the workflow is running behind the scenes, quote unquote. It's being monitored, it's being tracked. There's a dashboard with the health and everything on top of it. But I don't necessarily, for them, they don't have petabytes of information, but they're constantly processing all of these specification plans and requests for proposals that are coming in. It may not add up to the data that you're talking about, but the amount of data that's running through the system that doesn't have a human eyeball on it is significant, right? So, yeah, good question. Very good question. Yeah, I think we're on it. Any other questions before we move on? Because
From a policy perspective,
Yep.
From a policy perspective, do you offer some guardrails and some base policy guidance, or is that expected by the customer entirely to decide their own policies?
Right. It's definitely customer by customer at this point in time. We are seeing some default guardrails that are spanning our customers, and we're going to be releasing those as kind of default guardrails in the platform. How we work today is we usually integrate with a policy system that you already have in place within your organization, and then we use our labeling mechanisms and other things like that to kind of link the two together. We are seeing common patterns in what people want out of enforcement, though, and we'll be releasing some kind of more generic policy enforcement in the platform that you can turn on or off. But a lot of our customers have kind of custom policy enforcement, and we usually integrate some way, shape, or form with that.
And I'm sorry, I'm probably going to go back to the previous slide, if that's okay. When you talk about data structuring, does that cover, and this I'm not clear about, data preparation? You said that you are not doing this in the original repository. Are you keeping a separate repository to keep clean data? And how are you thinking? How are you dealing with live documents? We have documents that have been approved, they are final, and you have the live content. How do you address the constant update of these documents, deletions, etc.?
In our platform, you can decide how often the data is synced, right? So if you have static data, that's a one-time thing. It doesn't need to be reprocessed. It doesn't need to be rescanned. You can set it up that way. But if you do have data that is frequently updated that you need to re-ingest, you can specify that. And in terms of data structuring, yes, there's a separate repository that it goes into, right? So different modalities of data have different ideal structures, right? And so we were talking about the legal code earlier. Ideally, you want to represent the legal code both in a semantic representation as well as a separate store that has the references within the legal code to other passages of the legal code, right? That would be ideally stored in a graph representation. So when we ingest that information, we are decomposing that, putting it in the appropriate storage mechanisms that is separate from the original raw data source. Does that answer?
I have follow-up questions, but I'll wait.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? We'll keep moving on to 3. And we'll do a time check. Oh, we're doing good. We're doing good. Decision tracking. So I think this is and this decision tracking goes into what we consider measurability in our confidence scoring, which we'll get into later. We're trying to build these kind of like more generic things that you need to think about first before we necessarily go into features of the Maybell platform. But decision tracking is a big one, and traceability means a lot of things in AI, and I realize this is another overloaded term. We'll talk about, how we see traceability and what you can fundamentally do and what is hard or near impossible to do with AI, right? So traceability, how we look at it, traceability, interpretability, there's different words being thrown around for what this actually means, but how is your data being applied to AI? So there's a thought out there that we need to deeply understand how the LLM came up with the answer by like how it traversed, its embedding model and its neural network and things like that. However, if I asked anybody in this room a question about what they are an expert in, and I said, how do you know that? You would not respond to me and say, well, the neurons in part of my brain fired to another neuron in my brain, and I showed you the whole neural path, and that's how I came to the answer. What you would tell us is because I am a doctorate in what I do, or because I actually lived through this, or because I've done this in life, from your experience, from the context, from your data that you've attained in your life, you know the answer, right? Whether that's either mathematical or semantic or anything like that. And we don't see that being drastically different for how we think about AI, right? So let's track the data that we presented to AI. Let's track the data that came out. We can do things at a technical level, like track sparse and dense vectors from input to output. We can track intent of a prompt to result of a prompt. We can do a lot of things by looking at just the type and graph of information that we pre-processed, and then looking at the graph of information that came out in the output. And then we can compare these things to tell you, hey, with a high level of confidence, we believe this actually came from, your intent, or it came from the LLM's intent. I don't know that we're ever going to get to a day, maybe we will, I won't put it out of question, that hey, this is exactly how the LLM came to it, from a neural net perspective, and how useful that would be at the end of the day, I think is up for debate as well. Other things in decision tracking, you want to link. Linking to sources is one of the more fundamental things. This is almost every platform has this today, just linking back to the source. But it's not just linking back to the source. Something got the LLM to look at that source. Either you told it by the vectors, or it decided because of the corpus of information it got in the context window. So how do you track that? How do you understand that? There are methods and methodologies to do this. You want to make sure you're logging everything. Like, there's a lot that's going on in an AI system, what's going in, what's coming out. You want to check your latency, your number of tokens, different things like that. Like, this all helps you understand where the data is flowing. Attribution, did this come from, documents that you have over here? This has come back from human input. Like, where was the original source of this document? And unless you know where the answer is coming from, and unless you're tracking the inputs and outputs, it's hard for you to get back to, hey, did this come from the LLM? Did this come from our prompt? Did this come from human feedback that we got along the way? It's important to know all of these different things. And audit readiness is something that we think about. I will admit, this is not a solved problem in the AI space right now, but having as much information you can around how your AI system is working will help you. There are laws and governance and everything else coming up, like who knows what's going to get passed. I would get in front of this now and not wait till later, although there'll probably be grace periods on this stuff, like going forward on what you need to have around. But the more you can save around what you're doing with AI, the better right now. It'll help you troubleshoot and understand where you can go in the future.
So
Yep.
just a question about that, right? So if you log what came in, so you know what you have, and you
also know what came out. That doesn't necessarily tell you, or maybe you can tell me how it does, how the LLM got from A to Z, right? Because you really don't know that part of it. Is that right? You know, kind of the implication of knowing what you have tells you where it came from. I'm not sure I understand, or even if it's possible to do that.
I think there is research out there where people are figuring that out, right? Like in terms of being able to direct you as to what about the training of the model is resulting in these outputs that you're seeing. The question is, as Kevin said, how useful is that, right?
Right.
Is it more useful to understand the entailment between the source data and the output, rather than, as opposed to the black box of the model itself, right? Our position is that if you're able to have a reasonable sense of if this output has been derived from my data as opposed to prior knowledge or hallucination.
Well, that's my question, is how do you know that? How do you know whether it came from the context or the LLM training?
The simplest way is to look to see if the important tokens, simple, it's not simple, but it is a way of looking, is the important tokens present in the output actually visible in the input, right? So an example would be, if we said, what is the capital of France? And we told the LLM, here's a document, do not answer outside of this document. And it responds Paris, but you don't find the words capital, France, or Paris in that document. That indicates either it knew that ahead of time because that's a part of its training, or it just made that up right now. There is no such thing as Paris.
Got it.
Whatever, right? And
So you're
that's one
basically
way.
just looking at the tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at the output and input,
Right.
and there are different ways to assess how entailed they are.
Anybody else? Yep, in the back.
Thank you, Ron from Texas A&M. So just following up on his point there, so you may have a bunch of documents in your repo that have maybe conflicting ideas, right? And maybe some AI, relies on the patterns, right, in the frequency which one had, or maybe it could have been intentional that, you maybe have a evaluation that really kind of making sure that you put a lot of weight on something, right? But then my question is your solution making those conflicts surface so that the users or the designers be able to kind of capture that and make the right determination which one of the ideas is the right one?
So,
Mic closer.
As Kevin was saying, one of the key best practices is to log all of these things, right? Our platform does that, but if you're building it yourself, what you can do is have a clear log of the class of answers and the class of questions and the class of documents used to answer those questions, so that you can always go back and assess. If you are seeing contradictory answers, which documents are leading to that, right? Ultimately, you want that to be driven by your source documents, and if they are resulting in incorrect answers, to monitor and to iterate over that as that happens.
And just a follow-up on that one. So from what I understand is that Meeble is kind of an integration solution. So that you could just basically plug in. It's just mainly working on the prompt level, right? And you guys, I'm not sure if you're going to be supporting right now or is going to be supporting in the future, the fine-tuning, right? Because with all those at the prompt level, you can only do so much, right? And then some of the issues that I kind of mentioned about the conflict or determination of the right, facts may be subject to how the different models work under the hood, right? and how they make those determination. So you guys kind of figure those out, or just throw it out to the back-end models to kind of make the determination themselves.
It's also for the users to test, right? We can give you guidance as to which models are good for which use cases, but ultimately you have to try it out, right? You have to, for your domain, for your particular use case, certain models are going to work better than others, and to quickly iterate and identify that is important. Fine-tuning, on the other hand, is not going to help you if you present as context to a fine-tuned model conflicting documents, right? You're in the same position. Fine-tuning is going to help you with style and output, right? Sort of the topmost layers of the model. I don't think you're going to get fine-tuning as a solution for bad information going into the model.
Good questions. Thank you. Measurement and evaluation. I think we've said this a lot. So we're logging good context windows, tracking our data. We got multiple data stores sitting out there. Confidence scoring is what we call it. Truth be told, it's uncertainty scoring, but uncertainty scoring is not a good marketing term, I was told. So we call it confidence. It's a true thing. So everything, especially if you have a lot of unstructured, like I'll start with the best example, full use case is everything down to an OCR process to a retrieval has a level of uncertainty. So at the OCR level, there could be fuzziness in the image translation. PDFs, under the hood are very messy beasts. It's kind of amazing that they even work and and that we pass them around. Like Adobe's got like some crazy stuff going on there, but there is uncertainty on how you extract. Even a table. Is a table read horizontal or is it read vertical, right? Is text columnar or is it paragraph form, right? Is it different things? So there is a level of uncertainty all the way down to that level, all the way up through what vectors did I pick, how confident I am in the answer, and putting all those together. So having the right evaluation criteria. And like I said, at Maybell, we're not coming in and saying, like, you're going to hook up your data, you're going to make an experience, and right out of the box, you're going to get the best answer that you've ever gotten from AI in your life. I hope that's the case. We've had a couple of use cases where customers come in, they're blown away on day one, and that's amazing. But the process is like, I put in data, I got it out, and now I have a mechanism that I can get better. Because before I didn't know what I was doing, and now I actually have my hands on the wheel, right? I can start seeing, oh, it came from this data, or when I pull out this document and I change this document, or I A/B test it between two different experiences, or I set up an experience with identical parameters except I change the model, or I change the prompt, or I change a labeling mechanism, or I change the temperature depending on what type of model you're using, right? Having an actual mechanism to do this and then see a measurable output that you can give feedback to now gives you a way to actually build AI going forward. So it's not always about going in and saying like, hey, who's going to give me the best answer right away, but who's going to give me the platform? How am I going to have a system that allows me to measure and see if I'm getting better or getting worse? And with AI, you will sometimes get worse, right? It's not always just going to be up and to the right, especially if you change models or your context changes or the data in your company changes. How are you monitoring that? And if you do get to a place where a human is not eyeballing every output, how are you alerted to that's happening, right? What scoring system, what logs, what metrics do you have in your organization to actually see that and alert somebody that something has changed? And then you can actually go in and find out what happened there. Number 5, workflow management. This goes down into how you integrate AI into your tooling. I'll say it over and over again because we see this all the time. We see people trying to build the one AI agent for their organization, and just don't start there. Start with a use case. Start with process design. Start with tool integration into tools that you already use in your organization and see how well it works with that. And then back that into agent coordination, right? So a lot of us want to jump, the conference is called AGENTIC. We want to use AGENTIC. Everything's AGENTIC, by the way. I think AI is just AGENTIC now. I'm not sure. AGENTIC, I think when the term was first being used was truly meant to be that AI was going to decide everything about your workflow and how to get to the answer, right? So it's like you're gonna come in, you'll ask AI a question, and then AI is gonna decide which database to look at, how to pull the information out of there, decide what next database to look at, and it's going to be a completely AI flow until you get an answer. I can tell you most people, 99.9% of people are not doing that at all, at least in business. Most of the use cases we see is AI embedded into a current workflow process where AI is doing a very specific thing. And then it may get tied to a couple other AI things, and you can call that agentic. And then there are a couple use cases that work very well where you have AI decide, hey, I'm going to run an MCP or I'm going to run this, but it's more binary decisions and not just open-ended, across all your company data and things like that. But walk into it, like everybody is out there, the marketing term is agentic. Everybody's going to make you feel like AI is all of a sudden running, a complete part of their business. In our experience, it's not the case. Like, take a deep breath, step back, realize that you can use some more, do we call them legacy workflow tools now? I think, but you can use some pretty standardized workflow tools to embed AI into what you do, and it can really help. It can really help automate you. It can help you move faster. So think about integrating it into your tools. And then again, with that, as you have more and more AI steps, make sure you have human oversight somewhere in the loop, especially as you start stringing more and more AI pieces together. Remember, just as we talked about from like an OCR process to retrieval, where there's a level of fuzziness, and then it gets to retrieval and you're measuring that uncertainty, now you're passing a level of uncertainty from an agent to another agent to another agent. So, make sure you have a way to monitor that. And then that leads right into feedback. AI doesn't work without a subject matter expert. It doesn't work without people in your organization embracing it. It doesn't work without people giving feedback into the system in some way, shape, or form, whether that's signals you get, whether that's updates, validation tracking, governance. You need feedback from everybody in your organization on how AI is working. It does not get better unless you're constantly giving it feedback. Now, again, constantly doesn't mean every single output, but you're watching it and you're understanding it and you're using all the other tools that we talked about before. So when a human does sit in front of it, they're making intelligent decisions about where to bring it next, right? So quick time check. Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. So what do we want out of this? Like after we dove like these hurdles that we see most people jump into, we want confidence in what we're delivering. The one reason you have humans next to AI on every single thing that's doing is we do lack the confidence in AI initially. Like we don't have the confidence to just let this AI go out and do something. So you want to build, you want to think about those hurdles, you want to solve for those hurdles because you want the confidence to run. You want consistency in some way, shape, or form to run this, quote unquote, at scale, which we defined before. You want consistency in what your outputs are. Again, as Kieran mentioned, answers are not necessarily always going to be consistent. In his example, you could ask, what's the capital of France? And it could say Paris. It could say the capital of France is Paris. It could say a bunch of other blurbs and then Paris at the end. Like your answers are not always going to be 100% match. It's not like the old days where you can write a unit test and you can say like, you're going to have this input and you're going to have this exact output. You got to watch for semantically similar but different outputs and be okay with that being a good output from the system. You need to have control, whether that's latency, whether that's cost, whether that's policy. You want to have control around your system and what it's doing, and you want to have velocity, right? I would say, the hockey curve in AI doesn't happen until you really have velocity of using it over and over and over again. And again, kind of breaking that point where a human is sitting next to it every single time. So everything we talked up about to this point is something you can think about and do on your own. Like, you don't necessarily have to go out and get Maybell to do any of those things. You can, though. So this is what we do, right? And this is why we're here, and this is why we're here to talk. We are the box in the middle. We help our customers build and integrate the things that you see on the right. So if you want to call these agents, you can call them agents, but We do everything from entity extraction to classification, content generation. Our customers use us for a variety of reasons. It can be a single agent that does a single thing inside a workflow. You can agentically, quote unquote, put these together. We have workflow orchestration that will track on that. We're doing the confidence scoring. So by using Maybell, your product and engineering teams don't have to build out the things that we talked about, the vector databases, the citation databases, the labeling mechanisms, all those things is provided by the platform. I call it batteries included but removable. So we kind of give you an easy button to start. But if you want to change how you operate, you want to change how the labeling mechanism works, even down to the chunk size, your technical team can work with us on how that solution is delivered. And then we have the connectors for the things you see on the left, right? We're going to connect to a variety of LLMs, even your own models. If you've built your own language models, we have a couple customers who have built small language models from the data science team, but they want a better means to run them in production. We can use those, and we can run them on-prem, we can run them in the cloud, we can run them in your account, we can run them as a SaaS, right? We're not trying to suck in your data to our SaaS platform. We will do it because it's an easy button for a lot of people, but if your data needs to stay your data, we'll run inside your walls, right? And then to bring it all back, from where we were working with Toffler, Toffler went on this journey. Like, we spent every single part of this journey with Toffler from, hey, they were poking around with AI, how to get it to where it needs to go, working with their technical teams who implemented it in their product. And now they kind of have, we'll call it a living and breathing foresight system that's constantly getting better. They can govern their AI at runtime with their subject matter experts. They do have an expert in the loop, right? And they can reuse their assets, not only for themselves, but their customers can use their assets for themselves and not bleed over to other customers. And this is how they are looking to build a product, build a new revenue stream for their business, and quote unquote operate at scale. And again, what we mean by that is a subject matter expert from Toffler is not necessarily sitting in front of a customer at all times now, which means their customer can interface with Toffler in a way they haven't been able to do before. They can bring on more customers, they can do more business, they can drive more revenue in a way they haven't been able to before. And by the way, those subject matter experts are still there. So now that's an upsell, right? Or that's another way to get into their business. So I love this story because what we're seeing in AI, even beyond Toffler and stuff, is there's a lot of industries out there who didn't necessarily pick up the latest and greatest technology when it came out. Think manufacturing, logistics, chemicals, construction. A lot of these businesses work on unstructured information, IP information just buried in knowledge of people and documents. And it's not that they're trying to get rid of people in their organization. Like, that's not the thing. They're unlocking value that they haven't ever been able to unlock before. I know we hear the things about like the big cloud companies and they're using it. I mean, they're constantly hiring and laying off and hiring and laying off. I don't know if the numbers have actually drastically changed. Their excuses change all the time, but I think those companies are still growing. And the companies we work with, like, no one has come to us and been like, I have too many people in my organization, I need AI to like lay off half the people in my organization. I have an idea of how to unlock potential in my business I haven't been able to unlock before. How do I do it, and how does AI make that happen? And the fact that they can do it with the technology and not necessarily have to go double the people, it's a big win for them. So I think everyone saw this. We're down to like 5 minutes, so I'm going to skip ahead real quick so we can get more questions. But more examples of what we work on, because I know we've been using Toffler as a big example. We've also had great questions and examples from the crowd today. Spec to quote and PDFs, compliance and legal, technical or service-based knowledge bases, research or insights assistance. You can do a lot with generative AI. I think that's kind of the beauty and the beast of the whole thing, right? It's like AI is literally pervasive in everything that we do today. As an infrastructure platform, we kind of get to see it all. There's no one vertical that we go out and get. We're not building like the agent for consulting or the agent for finance. We're looking to help organizations build their thing that's going to make them differentiated in the world. So we get to see a lot of examples from the field. You might even have more examples that you're thinking of. Some other of what we have, and you can go on our site and look at these, but everything from finance to manufacturing to healthcare. And something we didn't dive into, we talked about data ingestion and modalities and things today, but a lot of these things, when you look at it, there's quantitative and qualitative information that's flowing in. So another thing that you need to think about is like, how do I, like in finance, how do I marry like statistical roll-up information with semantic information I know about either my customer or company or different things like that? Or in manufacturing, you know, how do I relay my product information to known, like what the product document says to what like my actual people on the floor says it does, and like pull those information together. So there's a lot of different ways to pull these together. We've seen a lot of different interesting use cases, and we're excited to work with you or help you out. But I kind of wanted to wrap things up there and give people a few more minutes. If you didn't get to raise your hand before, to definitely raise your hand now, and we appreciate any questions or comments that you have.
Yeah, when you say you
Or,
can ultimately, as you ultimately do things without a human, is that based on your use of the growth of confidence scoring? Is that how you basically decide when you don't need to have a human in the loop?
yeah, you want, or I'll take a stab. I think it's different for everybody. Everyone's level of confidence is different. So a little bit about our confidence score real quick, and you might have been saying this, but I'll let you go. Like, the confidence score isn't like we're going to nail what 90% confidence means for you and your organization on day one. Based on your subject matter feedback, you're going to get to a comfortable level of what that means for you and your organization. And then you'll be you might be comfortable with an 80 customer over there, might be comfortable with a 90. We do have customers who are blocking on everything right now, right? And they're just like, we eventually want to get to scale, but right now we block on everything. We still have a human looking at it, right? So you do see that spread. I'm not trying to avoid it, but I think it is different for the different customers that you're working with. I don't know.
I was just going to say it's a question of what is your mechanistic approach when you scale the amount of, you're no longer able to eyeball it. What's your approach for staying on top of the quality, right? No one wants to end up on the front page of the Washington Post. How are you architecting yourself to be aware, to have visibility?
Yep.
I guess a philosophical question, okay? Because when you talk about confidence, I'm trying to differentiate, and I always preach to my team, look, AI has the knowledge, we have the wisdom. So, your confidence factor, I think, does it help in building the wisdom or more knowledge?
It's a good question.
I don't think we should be looking for wisdom out of the LLMs, right? They are a tool like many other. They're quite sophisticated. They're going to drastically increase productivity, unlock various capabilities. But the wisdom is going to be brought by your people. They're going to imbue the LLM with the guidelines and the guardrails that their wisdom has brought. But ultimately, it's a tool to help you, right? It's not an oracle of any kind.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because, sometimes I see what, ChatGPT or Copilot will give us. I say, that's not right.
Right.
So, the dependency on human, the wisdom is something that can't be replicated by the machine.
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes you can feel like, machines have feelings sometimes, if you play around with Grok,
Yeah.
it can flirt with you.
Right, yeah.
I think it's a great tool to reduce toil, right? You can reduce the amount of toil that you have to do. You can architect it so that you're quite productive, but ultimately you have to have the people, the human in the loop, as people have said.
Okay, thank you.
Back here.
I have a question, and this is something that we're getting at my organization a lot. I know a lot of people talked about, when does it make sense to do your custom solution, and a lot of people mention when you have, some sensitive data that you want to consult. But other than that, what would be a good case? For instance, now we all have Copilot in my organization. It wasn't that great before to be able to consult documents. It's getting better, right? We have a corporate solution that allows us to sort of focus on certain content and get more accurate information. But we're starting to get the question, does it make sense to have a corporate solution that does this, or do we just wait for the tools to get better?
I think, it's a tough. What do you want out of the AI? I will say, if you're looking to chat with your documents, that's a different outcome than I want to process 1,000% more bill of materials every month than I process today, right? And I think those are two different questions, right? And I think if you're looking for a way, to chat with a large corpus of information to help people, I believe that is more like going out and getting a much better Google inside your organization. Whereas, hey, I want to drive a business outcome from my data and I'm going to use AI to do that. And I think that's the difference. It's like, I want to drive a measurable business outcome that is bespoke to what I do. There's a highly likely that you want to build that in-house, right? And I know that's it's a little bit generic, but it's going to mean something different to everybody in this room. But I think we can all think of something like, is there something in my business I would like to drive forward in a way that I can't do it today? And can AI be applied to that, and can I measure the outcome of it? I think that's a better way to think about building something in-house. And that's the decision process you should go through. Yeah. Zero? We're at zero. All right. We're at the booth, like literally right outside. So if you want to come and talk to us, I got to give up the room. But hey, really appreciate everyone showing up here on the second day of the conference. Thank you. Yep.